Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Dallas Meditation Center and the Awakening Heart community of mindful living. I hope you've had a good weekend, and we're very happy to join you tonight. And we have special guests tonight with us, Dr. Ruben Habito, and there will be more on that later. And tonight, for those of you who are joining us on YouTube, if you would like, some of you, I will give the link in a bit for where you can come over to Zoom for sharing and discussion. But some of you, if you'd like to come over a little bit early and you already know the link, you're welcome to do that. Just stay muted if you come over early. And but anyway, I hope you've had a great day and a great weekend, and we look forward to meditating with you today. And just remember that, meditation isn't about chasing the thoughts away, or, often people come to us and say, I cannot empty my mind. And it's like, I say, well, that's a good thing that you haven't emptied your mind. But, meditation gives us that something to recognize when our mind has wandered to the future or maybe to the past, and give us something to help us to come back to the present moment. That's mindfulness. And so if you're live with us or you're finding this later on YouTube, I say welcome to you and welcome for joining us today, and come back anytime. So anyway, we will begin with 3 sounds of the bell. So I will lead the opening affirmation. If you know it, you're welcome to say it. Say it along. Noble community, we gather here now to honor the way of peace and nonviolence, the way of wisdom and compassion, the way of joy and beauty. In solidarity with one another, with all humanity, and with all life on earth. Friends on the path, we gather here now to deepen our solidity like a mountain, and to renew our freshness like a flower. Through mindful sitting and walking, mindful singing and breathing, and mindful speaking and listening. Sisters and brothers of awakening, we gather here now to celebrate the one infinite light that shines through many religions and many cultures, to cultivate the wisdom of many teachers, both ancestral and contemporary, and to affirm the capacity within ourselves and all persons of every race, gender, orientation, and tradition to realize full and complete enlightenment. So my name is Cornell, and I'll be co-facilitating tonight with Bobby. Our bell master is Anne. We'll be guided in meditation by Jennifer, and we will have a talk by Dr. Ruben Habito. And I invite you to check in the chat window. If you're over on YouTube, please check in the chat window and we'll read those. And right now we have Catherine bowing in, grateful for our Sangha. Michael bows to all. Jen says, glad to join the Sangha. James, Lisa is bowing in and hello, glad to be here. And Lisa from Fort Worth, hello, dear ones. So I would like to now hand this over to Bobby, and thank you again all for joining.
Hello and welcome again. I'm so happy you could join us this evening. I think you'll find it really rewarding, a good way to spend a little time in your Sunday evening. So I would like very much for us to do the Medicine Buddha chant. It's there's just so much suffering in our world right now. And so, you could call to mind someone that is having a hard time, and very probably you know at least one person who falls into that category. But also, let's think about opening our hearts as wide as we can to embrace all the people in our world that are suffering. So if you know the chant, you can chant with me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vaishasha Guru Vaidurya Prabharajaya Tathagataya Arhate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Vaishashe Vaishashe Maha Vaishashe Raja Samukate Swaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vaishasha Guru Vaidurya Prabharajaya Tathagataya Arhate Samyak Sambuddhaya Adyata Om Vaishashe Vaishashe Maha Vaishashe Raja Samukate Swaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vaishasha Guru Vaidurya Prabharajaya Tathagataya Arhate Samyak Sambuddhaya Adyata Om Vaishashe Vaishashe Maha Vaishashe Raja Samukate Swaha. Thank you, dear ones. So just ordinarily, if we were here together, we would do a little check-in. And since a lot of you are on YouTube, you can do a check-in in the chat box, just so everyone knows sort of who's here. And we can hold you in our thoughts while we're doing our meditation together. In preparation for our sitting meditation, I would like to read the first two stanzas of the Contemplation before sitting. The Sangha is invited to go back to our breathing so that our collective energy of mindfulness brings us together as an organism, going as a river with no more separation. Let the whole Sangha breathe as one body, generate peace as one body, be free as one body. Let us transcend the boundaries of a delusive self, liberating ourselves from the superiority complex, the inferiority complex, and the equality complex. Let's listen to 3 sounds of the bell as we prepare for our meditation. Jennifer will guide our meditation this evening.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
I had to quickly move rooms when I realized my internet wasn't working well in the room I was in. So we did a little shift-a-roo, and here we are. So dear brothers and sisters, and dear Thai, just settling in now for this meditation, just allowing yourself to get comfortable. And we so beautifully started with 3 bells. And often it's helpful to begin your meditation with a little reverence of coming to the mat and to bring yourself to this moment. That could be in the form of a sweet little bow that you might make to your mat, or if you're sitting just on your mat, ringing the bell as we did. Maybe even starting with a chant or repeating a mudra. Just something that acknowledges this is a moment that I have set aside to be in stillness and to practice this beautiful form of meditation. So, finding your seat, settling in, and beginning to bring your attention, closing your eyes and bringing your attention to your breath. Seeing what quality or what state of mind you're in right now. Just kind of checking that out without judging it. And just allowing yourself to be however you are. You don't have to change anything. Just acknowledging it and saying, well, that's how it is at this moment. And breathing with that. And just as we did last week, beginning to scan. So the scanning begins with your seat feeling solid, with your legs underneath you, your shoulders over your hips. Your spine is solid and straight, but not too straight. The crown of your head is reaching up and your chin is slightly tucked in. Arms relaxed, hands laying in your lap. And so that's the foundation. And then you can bring your attention, as we did last week, just noticing what your mouth is doing. Are you holding on? Are you tense? See if you can relax your mouth just a little bit more. And bring that slight little smile to the corners of your mouth. And then checking out your brow. Is it creased? And if so, can you smooth it out and relax it? Is your jaw clenched? If so, just allowing it to relax, unclench. So softening the face. It gives us permission to soften the rest of ourselves, or soften our hearts, soften our defenses. And then check your hands. Are they clenched? If so, relax. Moving to the shoulders. Is there any holding on there? Letting go of that tension. And begin to notice what your habit tensions are. Where are you habitually holding on? You can begin to notice that and allow yourself to reset. And even as we go through the meditation, every once in a while, go check if your habit energy is to have tight lips, for instance. Then go back and relax your lips, or go back and smooth your brow, and then get back to the meditation. So now on the next inhale, bringing your attention to your belly and doing a nice belly breath. Just breathing into your belly, also softening the belly that we tend to hold so tight as well. And then bringing your attention now up into your chest and to your lungs. And see if you can bring your attention to your lungs, the breath going in and out in the lungs. Feel your lungs expand and contract. And now see if you can bring your attention up close to the lungs. Really kind of zero in on them and really breathe with them and feeling that expansion and that contraction. You don't have to force the breath, just observe it without having to change it in any way. Just observing that subtle expansion and contraction. And see if you can journey with each breath and be really present on that journey for each breath, the beginning, the middle, and the end. Again, just observing it. Your breath knows just what to do. It's been breathing since the moment you were born. So just watching what it does and what it's like. Mine tends to be very light, like a butterfly wing or something, when I'm just naturally calm and breathing. So be observant and notice your own breath and its particular way of being. You can begin to realize that the breath has an arising and then an expansion, an opening, and then a little pause, and then a contracting and a little pause. There's a whole journey that the breath goes through. See if you can feel that and observe it in the lungs. Now begin to bring that expansion, that awareness of your lungs, that the expansion and the contraction, the whole series, begin to bring that outside of your body and begin to notice how every living thing expands and contracts, comes and goes. The whole universe is pulsating, and we're pulsating along with it. Pulsates through daytime and nighttime, and the tides coming and going, pulling in and contracting back out. I mean, expanding back out, contracting in. It's on a different level and a different time frame, but it's the same coming in and going out. The seasons change, beat. And what they're discovering about the universe is that it continues to expand. What they know now is it's expanding and expanding and expanding. Many galaxies, many, many, many systems out there expanding. Something that's hard for us to comprehend. And what they know is that at some point it's going to pause, just like our breath, and stop. And guess what? Then it's going to start contracting. So even this vast universe is expanding and contracting and will contract. So our beat, our rhythm is a part of a bigger rhythm. And the bigger rhythm is a part of our rhythm. Breathe with that thought for a minute. When we breathe, we're breathing with the universe. The universe breath is breathing with us. And now take all of that and come back, go back inside and observe your own lungs. Come back to your body in this moment with this breath. And remember, when you connect with yourself by moving inward, meditating, when you connect with yourself, you're connecting with all living beings and the entire universe.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be free. May all beings be joyful. May all beings be free. Brahma Vihara Maitri, Brahma Vihara Karuna, Brahma Vihara Mudita, Brahma Vihara Upeksha. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free. May all beings be joyful. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be at peace. Thank you, Jennifer, for that wonderful meditation, and thanks to all of you for joining in. So, thinking about our theme for this month is taking refuge. And this is the part of our program when we always recite the refuge chants to the three jewels. After that, we'll enjoy a talk from our guest, Dr. Ruben Habito. So I just want to say a little bit about these chants. We take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And next week, I want to talk about this in a little more depth, thinking about what that means to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So let's think about that as we recite the Three Jewels chant. We take refuge in the Buddha, the awakening heart of infinite light, that which shows us the way in this life. We take refuge in the Dharma, the awakening path of infinite light, the way of understanding and of love. We take refuge in the Sangha, the awakening community of infinite light, those who live in harmony and awareness. I'm so happy, I'm delighted that Dr. Ruben Habito has had the time to visit with us this evening. In some ways, the coronavirus is making it possible for people who wouldn't ordinarily be able to join with us to come and be a part of our gathering tonight. So I'm just delighted that Ruben has had the time and available to come and speak with us. Dr. Habito is a professor at SMU. He's the author of many books. He's the founder of the Maria Cannon Zen Center and their spiritual teacher. So I'm just thrilled that he's able to be with us tonight. He's going to use the topic spiritual practice as refuge. So I welcome Dr. Ruben Habito.
Thank you, Bobby. It's a great joy for me to be able to be with everyone tonight and to offer some pointers and reflections on your theme, on our theme of refuge, taking refuge, and taking refuge together. So, first of all, what is refuge? By the dictionary meaning of the word, it is a place of safety, a place of comfort, a place of security, a place of peace, a place where we are at home, and thereby, in being at home, we can be fully ourselves. We can really let our authentic self expand and flex itself and embrace the whole universe. So, if we have found the right refuge, then we are able to realize this is home for me, and that home is a place where I can open my heart and invite all sentient beings to join me in that place of refuge so that we can take refuge together and celebrate our being together. So, that is, first of all, a framework that I'd like to keep in mind when we ask what refuge is. And so, as Bobby said, next week you will be reflecting on 3 specific forms of refuge, or a threefold refuge that is handed down in the Buddhist tradition: the Buddha, the awakened one; the Dharma, the liberating truth that enables us to see things as they are, and thereby letting our hearts outflow with compassion; and the Sangha, the realm of all beings together who are in that home together, who are also seeking to be awakened. So that will be for next week. But for tonight, I'd like to offer some angles on spiritual practice itself as refuge. We find refuge in this spiritual practice itself. So, what is spiritual practice is one point that will be addressed. But before that, the question is, why refuge at this point? Why do we need to take refuge? Well, if we open our eyes around us, it will be immediately clear to us that the world in a state of disequilibrium, the world is in a state of chaos, the world is in a state of impending destruction. Bobby already mentioned earlier that if we look around us and if we open our heart, we can see how there's so much suffering in this world on so many levels. There is, of course, the immediate level that we are all hearing about in the media, and we may have also heard about around as we converse with people. There is the pandemic. People are contracting the virus and are beginning to, or rather, are receiving the effects of that in their bodies. And more people are dying. And we have now reached a stage where there has been a spike for the second or even third time in this country, the United States, and in Europe and in so many other countries. There is a similar surge. Now, we are told that there is hope in sight with a vaccine that's being developed that will hopefully be distributed in time so that we can get out of this immediate danger. But still, that impending threat of illness, of disease, is there all over us. So, on that level, our hearts are seeking refuge, a place where we can find safety. Another level that makes us feel that we are dislocated and that we are ill at ease is the fact that there's so much conflict in the world. There is so much animosity between groups of people with their different labels, between their different tribes, as you might call them. This is the tribe of this political party versus this tribe of another political party, or it may be a racial or ethnic community vis-a-vis other ethnic communities, or it could be national boundaries, or it could be boundaries of kin as well versus non-kin and so forth. So the human family is radically, unfortunately, divided into so many factions based on so many factors like that. It could be also gender or economic capabilities or social class and so on. So many ways in which our human family is divided, and therefore we feel that inner sense of not being whole. Another level in which we can feel that inner tear in us, that we are being torn apart, is our alienation from the natural world. We human beings have been looking at the natural world, at the ecosystem, as something out there that we can exploit for our own uses, so that we can extract from it whatever resources we need, and then just dump the waste of our consumption and of our production back, and that produces toxic materials. And so what's happening? It's boomeranging back on us, so that we are feeling the lack of the resources that we need, especially the rainforests and so on. They're being felled and they're being depleted in a way that the balance between carbon dioxide and oxygen is being coming to be lopsided, and it is now becoming a factor in changing the climate, to the effect that the oceans are getting, so that the polar ice caps are melting and the oceans are rising, and so there will be threats of floods in different places, especially in the coastlines, and we are now experiencing hurricanes and also fires in the western part of this United States and so on. So many so-called natural calamities are happening, and we think that they are just natural calamities. But scientists are pointing out that these are the effects of the kinds of things that human beings are doing, which precisely is diminishing the natural resources and also imputing, or rather dumping, toxic material upon our earth in a way that that imbalance is being felt. And so the earth is now in pain and rumbling and showing its effects in these fires, in these hurricanes, floods, and now the pandemic. So these are external factors that are threats to our lives, threats to our well-being. And in experiencing these threats, we feel that we need to take measures to find a place of safety, to protect ourselves. And that is precisely what impels us to seek a place of refuge. On that external sense, where can we find safety? Now, but there is a more important and more deeply rooted kind of dislocation that leads us to seek refuge, not just from external danger, but from the threat or from the dis-ease that eats us up from within ourselves. That word dis-ease corresponds to the Sanskrit and Pali word dukkha, that the Buddha, who was named Siddhartha Gautama at birth, and then as he realized a certain sense of unease in the way he was living, he underwent a spiritual search, and towards a point, after realizing that he could not get any help from the teachers who were reputed to be wise around him at that time, but they were all teaching different doctrines and different ideologies and belief systems, and he could not find any resonance with any of them. He decided to seek that refuge himself, and so he sat under a tree, and there, in his sitting under a tree, taking the approach that had been handed down to him from the Hindu tradition called yoga, a word which means union, he found a place of integration of his bodily being and of his spiritual being. And in that place where he was just sitting, being aware, breathing in and breathing out, and letting his mind be calm in the here and now, something opened to him. an opening that led him to an awakening. This was a transformative event that led him to become a Buddha, an awakened one, who now sees the universe, sees the world, sees everything from those eyes of wisdom and awakening, which thereby, to speak in Buddhist terms, sees how things are just as they are. In short, how things, everything in the world, everything in the universe is intimately interconnected with one another. And in realizing that intimate interconnectedness, in realizing that I am interconnected intimately with each and everything and each and everyone in this world, a heart of compassion is naturally given birth to and arises, and it becomes the prevailing power in one's life. Seeing things as they are, namely seeing the intimate interconnectedness of all things, which leads me to realize that the suffering of the world, the suffering of the universe is my own suffering, and that everything and everyone in the universe is my kin without any exception. And that kinship leads me to a heart of compassion, the ability to suffer with each and everyone, and the willingness to give my life as a gift in a way that it might offer some form of alleviation from that suffering and liberation from that suffering, or some form that might help in the bringing about of the well-being of everyone else. So that is what happened to the Buddha, the awakened one. In his awakening, the heart of wisdom and compassion arose in him, and so that is what he offered to people, a way to reach that themselves. So when he was asked by those who were around him, when they saw that he was such a peaceful person who saw with eyes of wisdom and who really felt that deep compassion for everyone around him, they felt that is the way we ourselves want to live. So please, sir, teach us how we may also be awakened like you. And so he gave them many pointers, but among those, there are two words that stand out in what he taught. He offered them not so much a doctrine to be believed, but a set of pointers for them to practice so that they themselves might be awakened. And these two words are in Sanskrit and also in Pali, shamatha. Be still. Stop your discursive mind from its activity. Stop your grasping or comparing or evaluating and analyzing. Stop that part of your mind and just allow it to be at rest. And then, in allowing your mind to be at rest, open your heart, open your eyes, and see, vipassana. See things as they are. See through things without any obstruction. And the main obstruction that we all are that prevent us all from seeing things as they are is our little egoic self that we think is the center of the universe. So vipassana means seeing through that egoic self and allowing ourselves to see in a 360-degree angle. See in a way that the eyes are all over, and we see with the eyes from all angles. In Mahayana Buddhism, there is an image of the Bodhisattva named Avalokiteshvara in Sanskrit, or in Chinese, Guanyin. In Japanese, it's Kannon, a word which literally means to perceive the sounds of the world. And this figure of Avalokiteshvara or Kuan Yin or Kannon is depicted in artistic forms as having 1,000 eyes and 1,000 arms. That does not literally mean 1,000 if you count them, or that the arms are 1,000 as you count them. It simply means countless. And that countless set of eyes means that Kuan Yin, the bodhisattva of compassion, is able to see all things from the perspective of each thing as they are. And so one is able to be liberated from this very narrow perspective of the I, me, mine, from that single, one level, one dimensional view that puts everything at the center where I am, but precisely frees that little I and allows it to see with those 1,000 eyes and see everything just as it is, and see that each and everything is precisely deeply interconnected. And in that view of the interconnectedness of each one, each element in this universe, Kuan Yin also has 1,000 arms to reach out and offer a hand of alleviation, or a hand of comfort, or a hand that will help someone who is in need of some kind of aid. And so it is precisely the symbol of wisdom, of seeing from those 1,000 eyes, and compassion that allows one to give a gift of assisting and effecting alleviation through those 1,000 arms. So that is an outcome of the kind of practice that Siddhartha Gautama embarked in, and which allowed him to become a Buddha. This is his invitation to each and every one of us, to open our eyes so that we can see with those 1,000 eyes, and open our being so that we can see that we are all endowed with those 1,000 arms that we can offer to lift up people who need lifting up, offer a hand of help to those who need help, offer food to the hungry, water to the thirsty, and comfort to the lonely, and so on. That is an image of one who has found that refuge in the spiritual practice that the Buddha has taught us. But backtracking, more than the external dangers to our lives is that internal dis-ease that the Buddha himself pointed out when he noted that as we go through life only centered in this egoic self, if we only are motivated by what this little egoic self needs, what it wants, what it desires, then it will always feel, or it will always experience that sense of dislocation, dukkha. That is the meaning of that Sanskrit and Pali term dukkha. It comes from the image of a wheel that is badly centered. Ka would represent the wheel, and dukh or dush in Sanskrit, when put together, means the wheel is malaligned, or the wheel is not centered. And that is what the Buddha pointed out as the characteristic of the human condition. As long as we live centered on this little egoic self that we carry in our minds, thinking that that is the center of the universe. If we look around us, and if we are able to see with the eyes of our heart how so many of our contemporaries, so many of our fellow human beings are motivated mainly and dominantly by this little I, me, mine, what a sad picture the world presents to us, that each and everyone only out for himself or herself. And so that way of living in the world is what generates animosity, conflict, and that's what also generates insecurity. I feel those others are out after me, and so I need to protect myself, and so I need weapons, I need arms. I also need to have more so that I can feel more secure within myself, and I need to do more so that I can be more successful and feel better than everyone else. And so that is a symptom of this inner dislocation, this inner lack of peace that the Buddha noted as a characteristic of our human condition. As long as we are still centered in that I, me, mine, that egoic self. This being centered on the egoic self is also, in the Christian tradition, associated with what in Christian terms is known as sin. Sin is to be understood not so much as an act that is bad itself, but it is a state of separation from the source of all good, from the source of all love, from the source of all life, which in the Christian tradition is called God. And that separation itself makes the human being act in ways that are detrimental to itself and to others, precisely because of that separation. And we can note 3 degrees of separation in that regard. The separation of human beings from the natural world, when, as I said earlier, we human beings tend to view the natural world as objects out there that we can exploit for our own welfare and for our own happiness, in a way that objectifies it, in a way that can tend to destroy it. And this is what's happening in our world today with the impending ecological crisis. We have developed the technology to move many things through mechanical power and through atomic power in such a way that the natural world is being threatened with destruction because of our human machinations. So that is one fundamental dimension of our alienation from the natural world, which in Christian terms is also the creation of God that God gave out of love for all human beings to celebrate together, so that we can all celebrate our being together, partaking of the goods of nature. But rather than partaking together of the goods of nature, we tend to exploit it, or a small, powerful few are able to get for themselves the bulk of the goods and leave the others behind. And so we have this big rich and poor gap, whereby millions or of the seven or so, between 7 or 8 billion people who are currently living on the earth, a big chunk of that, 1, 2, or 3 billion, are living at the brink of poverty and are not even able to live a decent human life, not being given the basic amenities of food, shelter, clothing, lodging, in a way that they are seeking another place where they can find a place to live decently and humanly. And these are what we call refugees in the technical sense. From data of the United Nations Commission on Refugees, we know that as of 2019, there are roughly about 80 million who are given that designation as refugees. They have been dislocated from their ancestral homes. They are in seek of a new place where they can live a decent human life. And throughout the world, there are many such persons who have been displaced because of the danger to their lives, because of military violence that threaten them, or because of racial or other threats, or because of economic scarcity that lead them to leave their ancestral homes and are now in search for something. So millions of refugees are in our midst throughout the world now, but these 80 or so million are not the only refugees. As long as we ourselves are not feeling at home within our own self, as long as we feel that sense of dislocation, that sense of separation from our source, that sense of not being at peace with ourselves, as long as we are in that state of sin that Christians name as a characteristic of the human condition, then we need refuge. So where can we find refuge? The religions have their different ways of offering that kind of refuge. I just mentioned a brief picture of how the Buddhist tradition offers refuge, and you will be hearing more of that next week from Bobby. The Christian tradition offers the good news that you can find refuge by turning away from your little self and turning back to God. God, who in Christian terms is understood as a triune mystery. That source of love, that source of infinite love that became human, took on this human flesh and became one of us and lifted us all up and took on our suffering and took on our woes and sorrows and lifted it up so that we ourselves can become as God because we were originally made in the image of God. And that is through the power of God's own breath that breathes in us. So this triune mystery that pervades throughout creation and pervades throughout the universe and pervades through the existence of each and every human being is the source of refuge as described for Christians. For other members of the Abrahamic traditions, for Jewish and Muslim persons, they have their prescribed ways of finding refuge in the religious practices that are prescribed within their own traditions. So in following these prescriptions, individuals who adhere to one or other of these religious traditions may be given a way to find that place of peace, to find that place of home, to find that place of wisdom, to find that place where compassion can be generated. But there are also many pitfalls along the way. Someone who thinks that one has found a refuge in something may feel, now I've got it, I've got the answer, and I have it, and nobody else has, or rather, it's my little group, my little religious, my religious community has it, and others don't have that, and so that creates another kind of division, and that causes another kind of animosity among human beings when they compare their the kinds of refuge that they have found versus the others that others have found. Or some people may find some kind of refuge in an ideology thinking this is the solution for the problems of humanity. So if we all implement this, we'll all be in good shape. But those who don't agree with us, then there are enemies. Let's try to eliminate them. So that's another kind of ailment that precisely divides us. So the search for refuge itself can have pitfalls that may exacerbate and accentuate the need for finding true refuge. So given all of that, and given the diseased condition of our humanity, as the Buddha pointed out, that dukkha, how can we overcome this? How can we see through this and move on toward a place that will enable us to find a way out of this dislocated, this diseased, this destructive state of our being? That's where spiritual practice is offered to us. First of all, the word spiritual is what I'd like to focus on. Some of you may think that spiritual refers to a realm beyond material, a realm up there hovering over us, separated from our material and physical bodiliness. That is a dualistic notion that I would like, first of all, to set aside and say that's not what we mean by spiritual. Unfortunately, much of Western tradition is still infected by that kind of view that separates the world, separates the physical or material from the spiritual realm. What I would like to take is a working understanding of a group of scholars who came together to publish a set of volumes, about 22 volumes or so, on world spirituality, published by the publisher Crossroads. The editors, before they started the publication, came together and tried to ask, what is an understanding among the different religious traditions, including Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and other religious traditions, including indigenous traditions, including even secular spiritualities. Representatives and scholars of those different traditions came together and asked, in what way can we use the word spiritual that will resonate with us and will also be helpful for us to see that we have common ground in using that term when we say world spiritualities. And so they came upon this understanding that the spiritual points to the innermost core of our human being, that innermost core where we are able to encounter the holy, the transcendent, the infinite. And in allowing us to do so, in allowing us to encounter the holy and the infinite, it also enables us to experience our deep interconnectedness with one another. So the word spiritual then is not something that is separate from our physical bodily being, but it is precisely at the heart of our being in its totality, that innermost core of who we are, where we are able to encounter that which is holy, that which is beyond anything we can ever imagine, and that which is infinitely more than we can ever think or conceptualize. And it's a living reality that is waiting for us to be encountered in that spiritual core of our being. And at the same time, it allows us to encounter one another and see one another as deeply connected with myself, yourself, with one another, so that we are able to recognize ourselves as kin. Those who have come home to that place of the spiritual are at home with themselves and are at home with the world and are at home with each and everyone and each and everything in the universe, so that they can recognize one another. One such person that we know about, which we almost don't have to name, is the Dalai Lama. In just observing him, how he speaks and how he behaves and the way he lives his life, somehow something tells us that he has reached that spiritual core, and he speaks out of that spiritual core in a way that addresses each one of us, whatever our religious belief system may be, or whether we have a belief system or not. Somehow this is a human being whom we can recognize as someone who has come home to that spiritual core. He has found his refuge, and out of that place of refuge, he offers the wisdom and the compassion that come from the treasures of that spiritual core. And here's the good news. We too can be like that. Spiritual practice is precisely offered to us as a way to that. Now, there may be different forms of spiritual practice that different religions offer, but here is a form that I would feel can be taken in common across different religious traditions. A simple set of practices that each one of us can take on. And it's what many of you, or most of you, or those of you who are connected to this circle of the Dallas Meditation Center are already in the practice of. This is a practice of taking a posture conducive to stillness, coming to pay attention to each breath, and then letting the mind be still in each here and now, in just coming home to the breath, coming home to our bodiliness, coming home to the here and now. The kind of practice that Jennifer guided us earlier is precisely a very, very concise form of this spiritual practice that I am referring to. Simple. Take a posture conducive to stillness. And in this case, it's a posture where we are seated with our back straight, with our hands in a comfortable position on our lap or somewhere where it does not get in the way. And in taking that bodily form conducive to stillness, then we are able to breathe from the lower abdomen, which is the center of gravity of our being. And in breathing in and breathing out, we are able to find our connectedness with that innermost core. And in doing so, then we let our mind go from its wanderings and meanderings throughout the past or the future or another place, and bring it home to the here and now. And in doing so, in coming home to the here and now in this bodily posture, in this way of paying attention to the breath as it comes and as it goes, and allowing our mind to be fully present here and now, we are fully there. Being fully there, our heart is opened to that encounter with the holy, with the beyond, the transcendent, with the mystery of our being. Taste and see. Now, in Buddhism, there are different ways in which this has been developed, and different Buddhist communities encourage forms of practice like this, and the Dallas Meditation Center derives much of its practice from the Buddhist tradition through Thich Nhat Hanh. And so that can be a very life-giving source of spiritual practice that will open our eyes to wisdom and compassion. I myself come from the Zen tradition, so I have learned much from the Zen tradition, and it is what allows me to distill that practice into those three basic components: being still with a bodily posture conducive to stillness, paying attention to the breath, and allowing the mind to be still in the here and now. Now you might say, but then I can't get still because the mind keeps moving to and fro, or thinking about this or that, or thinking about what am I going to have for dinner, or thinking about, oh, what I did earlier today, and so on, or thinking what kind of shopping will I need to do for the holidays. Well, welcome to the human race if you find your mind like that. What this practice invites us to is notice that, and then just bring it back home. To the next breath, we bring it back home. And so right here, breathing in, breathing out, we are home again. It's all accessible in one breath. Breathing in and breathing out, we find ourselves already able to come home to the here and now. So now when we take a specific time in which we give ourselves this opportunity to just be still, pay attention to the breath, and allow the mind to come home to the here and now, you will notice things beginning to open up. You will notice connections in your heart and mind, making you see things that enable you to appreciate your life all the more. You will begin to learn, or not just learn, but you will begin to be able to smell the flowers along the way of your path of life. You will also notice the little crevices and little holes there that need to be filled. And so we fill them. You will notice more things, and you will notice so many things to be thankful for. We just went through the week of Thanksgiving that makes us, or that invites us to consider the things that we have received in our life that we are called to be grateful for. And so this path of spiritual practice may open our heart to notice that there are so many blessings that we may not have noticed before, that we can only be thankful for. So in leading this path of spiritual practice, what can open up in us is a heart of gratitude. And in opening up our heart of gratitude to each and everything and each and everyone in the universe, and as we go deeper in this spiritual practice, we may experience a moment that is called a breakthrough, when the center of our universe moves away from this little I, me, mine, and opens up and sees that each and everything in this universe is itself its own center. And what I am called to do is simply dance my life, dance the dance of my life, dancing with each and everyone else in their own center. So we can find ourselves joining that dance of life. It's an invitation. So refuge then is not a place where we protect ourselves against something outside of us, but it is precisely a place where we can find ourselves at home in this very tumultuous and very stormy and very destructive universe. But now, having found that place of peace, we can open our hearts to this world, to this concrete world with all of its sufferings and all of its animosities and all of its conflicts, and precisely offer ourselves as an instrument of healing in the puny ways that we are able to do so, with our little gifts, but also with our gaps, warts and all. So in our own little ways, wounded as we are, that woundedness can be precisely our key to understanding how others are wounded. And so it can be another element that can generate compassion in us to understand our own woundedness. And it is this form of spiritual practice that can open our heart to that. In having found our place of refuge, our place of peace, our place of home, we open our home now and are enabled to embrace all beings, to welcome them into that home. And lo and behold, in welcoming the universe of beings into our home, we find that we are also welcomed in everyone's home, so that we are at home everywhere. Just like a person like the Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat find themselves at home with everyone and everything and everywhere they go, because they have found their home in that place where no one can take from them anything, because there's nothing there except just what it is, things as they are. To awaken to that place of home is just the beginning. And there, a life of adventure, a life of opening up new treasures opens up for us. It's an open-ended invitation. Spiritual practice as a refuge. A posture conducive to stillness, paying attention to the breath, allowing the mind to rest in the now. And with that, a new adventure opens up. There's much more that could be said on this, but please take it upon yourself to make this a regular aspect of your day-to-day life. And as you do so, the treasures will open up along your way. As the Men's Warehouse guy in the TV commercial of the Men's Warehouse used to say when it was still being aired, I guarantee it. It's not me, it's not my individual being, Ruben Habito, who's guaranteeing it. The 1,000 years of practice of so many people who have taken up this spiritual path in their different ways they describe it are our guarantee that there is a path that will liberate us from this source of suffering, from this little egoic self, and allow us to move into that world where we can celebrate one another and celebrate and dance the dance of the universe. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Ruben. That was amazing. I heard so many things that not only resonated with me, but felt like it was like a new way of looking at some of the things that I know and practice. So thank you so much. So we're going to invite, if there are any people on YouTube, we're going to invite you to join us now on Zoom. You'll find the link in the chat box. And so I know that Ruben is going to stay with us for a while. If you have a question for him or something that you want to comment on, and this would be a good time to think about that. And when you're ready, you can either bow in or just unmute yourself, and we'll start whenever you're ready.
So I will say goodbye to those of you on YouTube, and if you would, I've put the link in the chat box, and you can come over at any time. And so those of you who are on Zoom, stay put right where you're at, and then we'll have some others joining us. And I was thinking as Dr. Habito was talking to us, it was, I think, summer of 2007 when he first visited our our Sangha, our Sunday Sangha. And we were in that meeting room in the upstairs of Unity Church, and there were about 50 to 60 of us in that room. And some of the people who are there are here right now. And I think how foreign that would feel right now to be in a room with 50 or 60 people, a tiny room like that. But yet what we have that is consistent is our community that supports each other through spirituality, supports each other in our own personal practice, being of benefit to all. And so thank you for that consistency. And I see several more of you have joined over here on Zoom. Some of you are still sitting on YouTube watching me, and I'm going to say goodbye for real now to you on YouTube. See you over on Zoom.
Well, Dr. Habito, I just want to thank you for that. That was just a magnificent lecture. That really was beautiful. I learned so much. I've heard you before, and every time it's just such a joy. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. And please feel free to